I spoke a lot about career awareness and outreach yesterday. That is not my major job. It's just something, being that I'm at the university level, it is a part of what I do. But my main focus is retention and recruitment. And so just looking at the fact that when I came, we had 17% women, and now we have 30% coming in, I had to think about what did I need to do right away to build that. And so basically just thinking about and strategizing about what could I do and what support I had to do what I needed to do. And from my perspective of recruitment, I had to, find the resources and kind of collaborate with the recruitment office and the directors in order to get what I needed to be done, as far as like building that relationship, as Ann alluded to at first, to try to get those students the best and the brightest that would, help build that right away. And then with the retention, looking at, the courses that students were failing in and not doing very well in, what could I do? Was it tutoring? Was it mentoring? What did I need to do right away in order to build that, and how much money it would take for me to do that?
Initially, when we started 3 years ago, we did not have an academic program. We just had some foundational support for stipends for some students that were working on a project with us. And for our outreach program, we used the same students as volunteers. So even though we didn't have a budget for outreach, for education, the students that were working with us in other projects, we trained them, and they came with us for outreach and educational events with teachers, high school, middle school teachers at schools, and it was the greatest resource. So I would also recommend definitely your own students, or even students that are not in your program. You can have them as volunteers. That worked really good for us, really great for us.
The thing I see is, this Clemson's a great example, is really good strategic planning. Putting the time in, and sometimes, you're so busy, it's hard to think, oh, I'm going to go through this whole process and whatever. But to have a group come together from like admissions and your department head and some really passionate faculty and institutional research is a great group to have, right? Get them in on the strategic planning. And then you've got this roadmap. And if you do really great strategic planning, you're going to also plan for metrics and evaluations, so then you can leverage that and build your program. So the programs that do great strategic planning, they grow and they get results.
I want to say this, you can't do it all. I said this yesterday, and you can't do it all alone. You got to choose what's important right now, and what, think about, like she's already said, who can collaborate with you, because it's really a big job and it takes a lot of people. So just remember that. Well, I'm going to go back and reiterate plan and think about what you can do and what would work. I have to go back to SWOTs. What are my strengths? What are my opportunities? What are my threats? What are the things that I can do? Now, I think you have to sit down and think about that, and then think about all the ways that you can get there. I would take that away, because it just, like I said, it's a big job and you can't do it all.
The two things in thinking about the fact that you have a limited period of time is, one, really think and focus on what are things you can do to make a difference, because we've talked frequently that the way you can continue programs is to have funding for it, and the way you get funding is to show results. And the other is, when we started out, probably I had a little bit that I wanted to change the world, and you don't get funding for that, it's really nice to say, but kind of go, ours was we want to increase the female enrollment in these programs. We didn't say in all of our career technical or even all of our computer, is really have something that you can identify as a very specific need. We got our second grant because we did well with the first one and added other programs. So really think about what you can do to make a difference, and know that you have other things you want to do. I have so many little stars or whatever out there that I want to grab onto, but I have to focus on what I can do to make a difference. And now when I go to my administration, they're more likely to listen to me because I was successful.
The first thing I would say is, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's all sorts of resources out there, and all of you are resources for each other. and sharing what you're doing. You don't have to write that survey from scratch. You don't have to write the recruiting materials from scratch. There's all sorts of people who've already done a lot of this work. You just need to plug into them. NCWIT can help. This program definitely can help. There's all sorts of other programs that we can link you up with to get those materials. The other thing I would say related to that is, for example, surveys. I hear a lot, people are like, oh, it's so great that NCWIT has all these social scientists, and we do have surveys. But when I work individually with schools, often what I'll say is, have you talked to anyone in your social science division? Because you might have someone over there who is interested in what you're doing and would love to help you with your evaluation, or so make use not just of your institutional research and your marketing, but you can also make use of your other colleagues. The other thing is we have an article hopefully coming out soon on interdisciplinarity. It's the same thing about in classes, bringing in people from outside technology to help your students see how things are relevant. So that's one thing, don't reinvent the wheel, use your resources, right? And then the other one is, sometimes I think especially when I show all those statistics, and we're like, oh, man, we need to increase diversity, and it's very heavy. But I think you can get more people on board if you can reframe that as, this is an amazing opportunity for your programs. It's an amazing opportunity to grow your enrollment, and it's an amazing opportunity to enrich your student body and enrich your community's workforces, right? Flip how you're thinking about it. This is a beautiful opportunity, right? It's just like Lloyd Berg in chemical engineering in the 70s at Montana State. He said, I want to double my enrollment. Oh, all I got to do is add women. So I think the way you think about it can change the energy around the projects.
Collaborations and partnerships. I mean, it's amazing what you get to do. So I'm repeating a little bit of what Beth said, but I was actually going to say exactly what, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But so it's amazing it's a lot more work initially, and sometimes you're answering emails, half a day just answering emails related to that, but it's so much, you get to do so much more, and you find resources that you don't even know existed. So, partner, collaborate internally within your institution, externally through these events, so that's critical. And the second one, document. I also mentioned it yesterday. This is just the first step for the evaluation phase. But initially, when we started, we just did lots and lots of things. But initially we weren't documenting everything we did, and then it was really hard for us to get all that information. So once you have, if you have all this information organized, it's so easy, it's a lot easier for you to then go to your dean, go within your own institution, or present a proposal. You have all this information, and it makes things a lot easier. So that would be my second one.
I think that there are a lot of resources available within the NSF ATE community, such as problem-based learning, because a lot of times it's not that the student cannot get the material, it's how it's being presented. Now, I do talk to students, I love my IT career and it's where I want to be, but that doesn't mean it's right for everyone. I don't want someone to come in who hates it, but I don't want a woman not to come into it because she's misled by it. But I can tell you that for our retention, a big part of it was the second aspect of incorporating problem-based learning, and we do a focus on the classroom event for instructors of how you can ensure you're inviting for all students. This was just a really quick thing I did yesterday with the spaghetti and marshmallows. Are you doing planning periods? Are you planning your class things to be inviting to all students and to be inclusive? So you want to make sure of why is a student not succeeding at it. Is it because they can't do it, or is it because the method being used to teach them isn't a good method for it? So we never, in fact, I had a woman one time at a school I went to visit, and she goes, well, I don't want to lower my standards just because to get more women. She honestly told me that. And this was only 2 years ago, and I was like, yeah, it totally flabbergasted me. You know, I believe women are equally intelligent to men. I think sometimes certain learning styles appeal to certain students. And so, yeah, you're not going to get students, because if a student can't do the work, they're not going to keep the job. But you want to make sure that you're not excluding them just because of little things you do.
When I talk to students, would try to figure out, like, what is their passion? Like, what's that thing, you know? And she said, well, I used to be a computer science major. I'm like, really? Why did you switch? She goes, well, and she was Asian, and she said, well, you know, it was getting hard, you know, and I was having trouble, and I was advised that maybe I would want to change into the social sciences. And I'm like, well, are you still interested in computer science? She goes, yeah. She goes, and you know what's really funny is nobody ever told me that I shouldn't go into computer science. You know, my family didn't say, like, no, don't do that or whatever. But when it started to get hard and I started to struggle, they were really very enthusiastic about me finding something else. You see the difference there? It's a subtle thing, right? But I think we do have to be careful in terms of when somebody's struggling, like, are we going to treat the struggle of a student who looks like the traditional computer person differently from the struggle of someone who doesn't look, and maybe doesn't speak or conceptualize things in the same way?
About 50% of our students, we have to refer them to what we call learning zone. It's tutoring, math tutoring. So, and some of them actually have gone also to counseling, and also, of course, here you have the ESL programs. So get to know those programs. In our case, for example, for the learning zone, for the math tutoring, that's done by their peers for other careers or other departments. So what we did, actually we haven't done it, but we already scheduled it, is to, we schedule 1 hour training of those students that give the tutoring. And the purpose is actually to explain to them our program. And for example, if you have concerns about minority students, you know, you can give a little bit of training in that respect to the tutors, or go to the learning center and give a little bit of training to the people who manage the learning center, make them aware of your concerns. So we found that to be really important, and we are already scheduled it. So that's one thing. Another experience is not ours, but from a similar program that we have on campus in the School of Science and Technology. They did their own, usually there's a first year induction seminar for all new students. So they did their own seminar in order to address the problems that we're having with retention, with students actually coming into science and technology and then deciding this is not for me. So in this first year induction seminar, what they did is they offer students an experience, including a research experience, by having professors mentor their students, and in chemistry, biology, and so forth. So first year students get to know what their career is going to look like after they graduate, and this program has been going for, I think it's only 2 years, but it's made a lot of a huge difference. And in that students that initially don't know what they're going into, they get a first-hand experience of research. They work with professors as mentors. So it's been really good. Of course, this is more like a long-term solution. You would have to create this kind of programs for IT, for example. I don't know if you have them, right? But I know that has worked really well for the science and technology programs in our institution.
So we do know that women tend to not apply, that they need to have everything in their minds on a job ad to be able to apply, and men will, like 60%, and they'll apply. I would argue that that's actually a rational response on women's part, because remember some of the other studies I showed, that women had to have, X number
Twice as
more
much.
impact points, right, to be judged, the resumes, right? identical qualifications. So I'm actually saying, I think women implicitly learn this, that that's what you need. You have to be perfect. You have to be. But we can interrupt that. We're hugely impactful on our students' lives, right? And while there may be a general trend, it doesn't mean you as an individual necessarily won't get that job because you don't have all of it. So I think we can encourage our women students, our minority students to just go for it. Apply for those jobs. The more you apply for, the more likely you're going to get something, right? But I'm always like trying to think about if somebody does something, there's often a rational, right, experiential reason they do it. And so instead of like kind of saying women have a problem, just say, no, women are rationally responding to the culture, right? And then how do we interrupt that? And that also is a way to reframe how we're thinking about our women students and our minority students, right? Rational response to a real environmental thing. How can we help them?
It's about relationships. If you put them in the role of co-leading your work and you really listen to them and you put your curriculum together so that it teaches what they want you to teach, they believe in your program. That's only part of the story. It's about relationships and presenting people, presenting students to them along the way. So creating the built and establishing the trust where they know that what you're teaching is going to produce the technical skills at least that they want, and then bringing your students out. I mean, I used to think that might be pandering. Well, maybe it is, but if they don't see them, they don't know they exist. So you need to bring them out. We also have done employer nights where we'll have 5 or 6 employers talking about what they're looking for, and then we have basically a networking event after it where they get to meet the students. You gotta show them your wares. First of all, do what they want to do. Show them your wares that you've done what they wanted you to do, and they will hire these people.
You know, something we do is if you do have a capstone course, we have at the end of the spring semester, it's called our BCT, Business Computer Technology Student Showcase, and each of our students has a kind of table where they have, and they're showing their project.
Good.
And we invite employers, we
Good.
invite our advisory committee, and we also invite the people from our college. Our vice president of student services comes and goes, wow, I didn't know your students could do this. The people in culinary come, we have a little budget and serve a bit of food for it, but all of our students get to show what the employer has. So I almost call it a reverse job fair, because the students are sitting at the table with what they did for their project with the computers. The employers are looking at it. One time, an employer scheduled interviews with 8 students and hired 5 of them from coming in. So it's a really great time for students to be able to show what they,
Sure.
Our capstone's very comprehensive. Now, they had to present it to employers for their grade. This is just a showcase, and they have their resumes, they have all of that. And so it's let your students show the work to employers in non-threatening situations. I think for me, it really was having both the picture yourself to make sure students could see themselves and humanizing the program so that they knew that it was something they wanted. But students have to be able to imagine themselves in a program, so make sure that they see people that look like them.
What we call in-reach can be highly effective. So you're actually targeting and recruiting from students who are already there. Now, there's politics to that, of course, right? You know, you don't want to be poaching, but you want to, I mean, I think you can frame it in a way as we want to get students in the right program for them. And, you know, if you think about nursing is a lot of what this is a reframe of what you're doing. A lot of what nurses are doing every day is working with technology and helping people. So it's just a different context. You're going to be working with technology just like you would have been in nursing, right? And you're going to be helping people.
I like the concept of enabling technologies, because that way you're looking not at verticals, but you're looking at the horizontals. So in that sense, many of the things that we do Even, I mean, of course, IT is a prime example, but for example, photonics with light is also an enabling technology. And that's the way that you can also sell it to people you want to recruit. Because you can say, since it is an enabling technology, you can study this and then decide, or what you want to apply it to. So it's not only that you're going into IT, it's that you're going to IT, but then you get to work in medicine, right? You get to work in education. You get to work in different entertainment, in different areas. You get to work in a Fortune 500 company. So I think that's a good approach, because it's not only, I mean, even though initially you may think of it as a disadvantage, it's actually good because it gives the students all these opportunities and a very broad application of what they're going to study.
Asheville does not have a huge IT place, so our students aren't going to get jobs with IT companies on the whole. I've talked to them for years about the fact that they're in horizontal markets because hospitals hire them, everyone hires them, so that if they want to know that they're going to have careers, it's that as people become more dependent on the IT, they're going to need the IT people for supporting it and everything. So as more and more businesses become dependent on IT, it actually is making them more valuable for jobs for it. So it really is, marketing part is that this is great. Everyone's using the computers. That means they love their computer people even more. We have to show that there's a need for our graduates when they're going to finish a program. And so I would have to say our state guides it, but our real part is we work, much as Ann has talked, by industry demand. If the industry says we need this and we need this, then it's pretty easy to justify. In my course of 20 years, I've added, when I started, we didn't have a networking degree. So I've added the networking degree, I've added digital media. We used to have programming, now it's web programming, and all of it was based on what industry needs.
Business leads. If you have business in a leadership role, they can get for you what you can't get for yourself. The business team are the ones that took our data for the career coaches, where I wanted 2, they wanted 3, and they got it.
Our programs, that's what I'm thinking about all the time is, so I need a lot of volunteers to work on my programs from faculty, and we'll often get into the faculty are so busy, they're not returning my calls, I don't know, we all know this is true, right? And I used to be on that end, right? People try to get me to do volunteer work, and academics are actually really impacted by a lot of, we are expected to do a lot of stuff for free, right? So I'm always thinking, what's the incentive structure? What's the incentive structure, right? And it doesn't have to be money, but it's like, what is going to matter to their career or matter to their job satisfaction or matter, and to be creative about like sometimes it's like offering something tasty at a faculty meeting can help turn things around, or sometimes I'm thinking like somebody's at an R1 institution and they're going up for tenure, like what's going to matter on their CV, right? If I'm going to put them on a committee, which committee am I going to put on that they're actually going to get some value from? And so to understand their incentive structure helps.
But one of the programs that was going on then was part of the First National Science Foundation grant, paid for my graduate work. But in order to get that to happen, they expected something to be put on the table.
Yep.
So they dangled that carrot out there, and I said, "Oh, you mean you'll pay for my graduate work if I do this?" So that was that paid for half my graduate school. I was there on Sunday afternoon, because I'm looking at down the road, and then so that gave me an incentive to do stuff. Now the later benefit was not only did it get me there to get my graduate school paid for, but then later I found out, oh, by the way, I did this work, and now, however many years later that is, I was trying to think back 15, 20 years ago, the results of that we still see.
Yeah.
So if you want to say I might have been there for the wrong reason, but the fact is the result to some degree ended up the same.
When I want to try something new, he'll go there with me. Virtual internship, externship. I didn't even ask anybody else. I just talked to him because when you're sticking your neck out there trying something totally new, it could blow up in your face. You do everything you can to make it successful, but it could blow up. So, I mean, you gotta find the ones that really, really, really are in it for their students. It also does not hurt to write notes to the bosses, their boss. I'm not his dean anymore. I make sure his dean knows what he's doing. His associate dean knows what he's doing. I also make sure the VP knows what he's doing. Brenda, who's now our EVP, knew that he was the one who stepped out there with me and let us try the virtual internship, externship. Loyalty that comes from working in the trenches together to try to figure out the next step to survive is incredible, and it goes both ways.